is Olympian kind of day. I have 4-time Olympia champion Jay Cutler, and I got 7-time 212 Olympia champion Flex Lewis. Welcome to JAYTV, guys. I'm so excited.
Pleasure. Thank you very much, both of you, for the invite. It's an honor to be on JAYTV finally.
Finally.
Hey, you're making me look bad with those records, Flex. 7-4, and still counting is serious business.
Well, listen, the 4 still stands. I don't have one of the mighty 4, but I'm trying.
I know, but I want to ask you one question before we really kick off. But what made you decide to stop at 7 when you could have you could have kept going? Now, I'm sure this year, you looked past this year and you're like, man, I probably could have won another one. You came into your all-time best for your 7th, by the way, I think, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was crazy. But, did you have a number set in your mind? Is 7 that number? Or?
Funny you should say that. No, there was never a number. It was obviously taking it back to the 202 days. My goal was to win the 202 title. And of course, the last year that they announced it was going to be the 202, I really thought I'd done everything in my power to move up the weight within that 202. And then obviously Kevin English beat me in the last ever 202. Moving up to the 212, my mindset was, okay, this is it. This is going to be my title. And I never said that I wanted to have X amount. I think you're shooting yourself in the foot if you're aiming for something so premature. I wanted to win and defend. That, to me, if you can defend your title, you're a solidified champion in my eyes. And that was the goal, was to win and defend. And then you re-evolve, every year. I evolved what I was trying to do as a champion. And I still wasn't really maxed out in that weight class. So my goal was to keep on evolving, improving my physique, work on my weaknesses, and keep on coming in every year. And then what happened was I was finding myself maxed out and training for this off season, which was, nothing, because I had to over diet it off every single year. Mm-hmm. So when it was coming to, I would say 5, 6, and 7, it was getting incredibly hard. And I had to dig deep every single year to look into myself and say, why am I going for this title this year? What was the motivation? And every one of these titles I have, I don't have an office like you, Jay, but I've got my trophies next to me here. But every one of these trophies I look at, and I'm sure you'll say the same thing, everyone has a story. Mm-hmm. Everyone has their pitfalls, their motivational aspects, and everyone really has that oh shit moment where you could have been like, man, this could have killed my prep, or if I didn't have this mentality, I wouldn't have persevered through. And really, 5, 6, and 7 all came with injuries and stuff like that, and nobody even knows about. I've never even talked about, because I felt no need to. I didn't want to speak about it going into the show, and I certainly didn't want to speak about it after the show. And 7 to me was a combination of many different things. One was there was a lot of new young blood coming in. A lot of the old blood was leaving. Jose Raymond was leaving, or retired in the same year. There was a lot of athletes that were on the edge of not making the places that they used to be. And there's a lot of young blood that are coming in that were talking. And I just wanted to solidify that I was the champion and leave on top. And that was one of many motivations too. Also, I've spoken about this before too. I would have left at 6. But we all know the story. Dallas passing away 3 weeks before. So that prep was really, I would say, like autopilot. So I had no chance to enjoy that last moment on stage. So then it took me many, many months to really get back into that prep again and decide, okay, I'm going to do it. I think I decided maybe just before FIBO that I was going to do number 7. And then as soon as I decided, that switch turns on and it was lights out for me. So I think I answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious, you still haven't hit your peak, right? I mean, we talk about that. I think you're in your peak into your late 30s, especially someone like you. But, you started as a teenager. I remember reading about you in Flex magazine, and we both had kind of like a cheerleader, sort of like Peter McGuff was both like in our corner, right? And he influenced all of us on this call in some sort of way.
Yeah.
And he was a British guy. I remember seeing like all the articles. But talk a little bit about like your upbringing. Your family are rugby players, from my understanding, correct? And your brother he was actively. I mean, you have a sister too. Was she in rugby also?
She still plays for my country. Yeah. So.
Wow.
Yeah, I come from a very sporting family. Growing up in my town,
what's your town over there?
My town is a place called Llanelli. There's no way you can say it, even if you've had a couple of strokes. There's no way. Hey, you know what? Let's try and pronounce it right now. You got to say it
again.
Llanelli.
Slanty.
Good attempt. But how it's spelled is LLANLLI. And in Welsh, we pronounce the double L as a sh, and it's from the side of the mouth. So Llanelli. Yeah, that's good enough. So,
well, he's French. He's French. He should be able to say other words. I mean,
I got an advantage. Yeah,
he just learned how to speak English. Believe it or not.
Yeah, same for me, Jay. So we roll a lot about letters being French and being Welsh. Yeah. So my town is a population of about 35,000. It's a very blue collar, steel working, mining town. My dad was in steelworks. He just retired after 47 years. So that's all I knew was coming out through school was you either fell into one or two jobs, professional athlete, or you worked in the town as either a steel factory, or you go to the military. So every one of them paths were ticked for me, every one of them. But rugby was my calling card. 6 years old, I started playing rugby. My grandfather played professional rugby. He then went on to be a very good coach. A lot of the athletes, the professional athletes who are now coaches, will always talk about my grandfather right now, and he's passed away now. But it was set in stone, really, that was going to be my path. That and running track and field. So at 6 years old, I played, and if you wanted me to go into a different subject here, I picked up my nickname Flex at 6, and it was Flexi. And throughout my rugby career and my track and field, I was called either Flexi or Flex. So it was destined at one point in time for me to be playing rugby. I'd done the whole cliche regional squad. I went to colleges. I played for my college. We won the British finals, which is the highest you can win. I played on the wing, which was like a speedster. And like I said, I played rugby in the winter time, and I run track and field. And I run for my country. I run 100-meter hurdles, 110-meter hurdles. I run indoor track and field. I've still got records still to this day. But rugby was, again, the path that I was pushed into. And my mother was involved as well from the administration side. My dad was a coach. My little brother played semi-professional rugby, went on to coach, and actually now is in Penn State.
I saw that. That was amazing.
Yeah, so now he's coaching in Penn State. And my little sister, she's gone through the same thing as well. Now she's playing for Wales 2 women's 15s and 7s, which is a very popular game now, growing. So yeah, my whole family's involved with rugby, and I love that sport. You know,
I see you still follow it pretty consistently on your social media. You're always getting up early or whatever, watching the games, right?
That's it. When the World Cup was on, Ali was like, "What the hell it got into you? You're getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I can't get you up at 4 o'clock in the morning." And I watched the boys play rugby, you know, and friends with a lot of them guys. So it's good for me because they're well into their bodybuilding too, and they support me as much as I support them. And the guys who play rugby in Wales are superstars. So yeah, so again, going back to what I was saying, family rugby was for me massive. I grew up every Sunday playing rugby, but it was a turn of events for me when I broke my elbow. So I broke my elbow. But it was 10 days before I was supposed to have my final trial for my country.
And what age was this flex?
This was 15.
Okay.
So I was really excelling at rugby, but I was wild. So I bought a motocross bike. It was the summer holidays, and I was ripping it over all the fields with all my boys, all my friends a lot older than me. And of course, it's always the last jump, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And the last jump was, to this day now, I think, holy shit. But again, listen, I'm here talking to you guys. I went round this empty field, and my back end started coming around like speed, like a, what do you call it, speedway. So I powered out, and as soon as I started correcting myself, I hit this big mound of bricks that had been thrown over the fence from guys who were doing construction in the field next to it. So I hit this, I went up in the air, the bike, my clothes got caught on the throttle, and the bike landed on top of me and was ripping the inside of my leg away. So I had third-degree burns in the leg, in my inner thigh, and I dislocated and broke my elbow. So they rushed me to hospital, and I don't know if I've told this story many times, but they rushed me to hospital. They took me in, and my mother was an ex-nurse, so she knew the severity of this. And in the UK, the NHS, National Health Service, is free health service, so everybody goes to the hospital, even if you have a cough, even if you have a cold. So I'm sitting in there with my dislocated hand, going in and out of consciousness, and I had to basically pass out on the floor for them to take me back, to cut all my clothes open and take me straight to emergency operation. And the doctor who saved my arm, to this day, whenever I'm home and I have the chance, I go and thank him. He told me I was half a centimeter away from having my arm amputated.
Wow.
So, listen, it's a crazy story that now I go on to being one of the best bodybuilders in the world, right? I was half a centimeter away from having my arm amputated. And this being said, it was on the operating table that he had to make a judgment call of like, hey, I can either put this kid's arm together because it was pressing on all the nerves, or I can cut it off. And here we are to this day now. So I still got the scar on my elbow. I don't know if you can see that there, but I still got a pin in my elbow. So it's given me problems. I'm not going to lie to you. It's given me problems over the years. I don't talk about it. I don't moan about it. I put my hat back to front and I just fucking work, you know. So the blue collar mentality that my mother and father brought me up on certainly has kept me pushing forward throughout these years.
So is this how you found? You said okay, I'm not going to compete in rugby anymore. I'm going to work towards bodybuilding. And like how did you find bodybuilding? Just give a kind of a brief of how that came about.
So I was 15 when the incident happened, and I discovered at 12 years old a book on Tom Platz, and this book blew my mind. It wasn't the encyclopedia, it's here somewhere, but one second, let me see, I've got it right here.
Jay, you were 12 too when you first fell into bodybuilding. I was
12 when I saw Chris Dickerson. So,
yeah.
Oh yeah, you still have the book, huh?
Still have the book.
This is we all have, yeah, that was the first book you read then on bodybuilding, and obviously Tom Platz was a crazy leg guy, right? Intensity, and I'm sure playing rugby, you had the development in the legs, I'm sure, and the speed from what you're telling me from the sprinting and whatnot, which, by the way, I still see you sprinting, racing people right now. What's up with that?
I know, I need to chill out now. My knees are not ready for these days anymore. But yeah, I still got it because I love to blow the perception of what bodybuilders can do. I could still do a backflip. I could just have a couple of drinks before I do anything like that anymore. But so to go back on the book, at 12 years old, my auntie had brought this book back. She went to a seminar in London. She went to see Tom Platz, and Tom Platz was doing like a world tour. He visited my auntie's university nursing in London.
Yeah.
And she met him. She thought he was great, good looking, and all this stuff. I've heard the stories. And she brought this book back to Wales, to my grandparents' house. So me being the nosy 12-year-old kid I was, she put it into her old room, went back to London, and I found this book and pulled it out, and I was just blown away by this guy's legs. Now, the only physiques I'd seen up until that point was WWF guys like Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, and that was normally put on at 2 o'clock in the morning because of the violence, right? But I used to sneak down and watch that with my uncle. So that combined with Arnold's movies and Sylvester Stallone and Jean-Claude Van Damme all subconsciously played a big part in this, you know, the breadcrumbs being put down. And I used this book to have my early leg development. Now, I remember my father had an old pair of Weider dumbbells, the old plastic coated dumbbells in the shed. So I remember at about 12, 13 years old, going up to the shed, and my shed was up the top of my garden. So it was several steps you had to go up. And I remember waiting for them to go shopping, breaking into my father's shed, the screwdriver, and bringing these weights down the steps, through the house, up the stairs to my room, which was hell of a job. And I remember my parents just coming in, and I just got them under the bed just in time. And I planned this every couple of days when I'd pull these weights out. I had no interest in having big arms. I had no interest in chest or anything like that. Legs, Tom Platz. So I remember putting this bar on my back, about 12, 13, doing 1 rep. And I remember struggling. And I remember putting the bar on my bed, putting my back to the bed, and somehow getting it up to do 1 squat. Then 1 turned to 2 and turned to 4. And I'd done this routine over and over until I had a knock on the door. And my old man, my father, comes through the door and he's like, "What the fuck's going on here?" Thinking I was doing something, you know, as a teenager would be doing, you know. And he's like, "Oh, fuck." Like, "Oh, thank God. Okay, but you're too young to be doing anything like this." So my dad didn't condone weights, but he thought I was too young. He thought I was going to stunt my growth. It's like, "Dad, I'm 5'5". You're 5'5". Mommy's 5'4". I'm not going to be a basketball player, let's be honest. So it was only till later on in life, like a couple of years later, that I started weight training in school to coincide with my rugby days. And then it picks up back to the story I was saying. So at 15, I started really buying Flex magazines, but rugby was my passion. Bodybuilding was this crazy aura that I kept on being drawn to. But again, nobody in Wales around me, no bodybuilders, no uncle or cousin that took me under their wing. It was just rugby, you know, only. So when I broke my elbow, I remember pulling out these Flex magazines and reading them. I said to myself, when I get out of this plaster cast, I was in for 8 weeks, all throughout the summer holidays. So all my friends, they go into the lake and they were doing all the stuff the teenagers do. When I get out of this, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And one of the goals was to learn how to do a handstand, a walking handstand, and a backflip. I know that sounds crazy when you're sitting in a plastic cast, but I told myself, I'm going to fucking do this, and there's nobody going to stop me from doing it. So I remember the plastic cast being cut off, and when you're in this position for 8 weeks, you know, you feel strong as anything because you only got this movement. But as soon as they cut it off, my arm just went limp. And it was the worst feeling. To this day, it's probably the most kicked my ego I've ever had. And it was this arm which is all built up, and this arm was just weak as anything. So I started picking up really weights for the first time properly after that incident. But first, prior to even getting to that stage, I started training with a can of beans. I remember picking up a can of beans and curling it just to get strength back. And that can of beans then turned into like a bag of sugar or something. And then I progressed and progressed to the point then where I was like, okay, I'm going to do a handstand. And my mother, as you can imagine, was like, what the hell are you thinking? And she's seen her son trying to do a handstand, collapse on the floor. And this was an ongoing thing, but I was determined, SOB, to do this handstand. And I remember one time I just cocked it, and the rest is history. And then I started walking on my hands, and I went back to school after the summer holidays. We do gymnastics as part of the curriculum, rugby. So I was going in during my lunch break to train on weights and then also do extra stuff with gymnastics. So I learned how to do a backflip. I could walk the whole length of the gymnasium with my hands. And so that was really a turning point. And the reason why I've really talked about this story in depth is that was a turning point for me where your mind is such a powerful tool. And I told myself when I get out here, I'm going to do this. Now, I could have sat back and listened to everybody, and I swear my life, not one person told me, even my family, who were very supportive, told me I could do this because they thought it was nuts. Then I am with a pin in my elbow, broken elbow, recovering, and there's me saying, I want to do a backflip, I want to do a handstand. It's ridiculous, right? But it's been a message I've really followed all my life, and I followed my heart, and I followed everything I've done. Like, listen, it's not always what worked out, but even coming to America, and we have a very similar story, the people we've met coming over when I was young, but coming to America, I had to say, like, you know what, let's just go for it, let's roll the dice, you know, and then we'll deal with the repercussions after, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you started picking up those magazines around this time, Flex, Dorian Yates, Mr. Olympia.
No, it was
Amy.
It was no. When I started picking up the magazines, first of all, when I first started picking up the magazines, it was Dorian Yates. But when I first started training and buying the magazines religiously, it was you and Ronnie chasing.
Wow.
Yeah.
But how did it make you feel? I mean, yeah, when you have a British guy that's Mr. Olympia, did that give people like hope? Because I always wonder, like, you know, Dave's from Canada, and I had like an interview with Fuad a week or so ago, and I said, you know, the Canadian and Brits seem to always be the disadvantage against the United States bodybuilders. So did it excite you more when you saw a British guy as like the reigning champion of the world of professional bodybuilding?
The truth is, Jay, I didn't even look at it like that. I think maybe it was a little bit of a young mentality. Ignorance is bliss. I just came over to the US when I really got momentum into bodybuilding, and I didn't think that it was me versus America, or the American athletes get more advantage. And now I can see why, of course, because the NPC route is a phenomenal route for progress. Athletes get seen by the judges, coverage, and this was before social media. So now it's a little bit different. You could live in, you know,
anywhere
in the world and still be able to be a professional athlete. But back then, I knew that I had to come to California and just be seen. You know, I remember coming over from the UK, and I was literally undefeated as a junior under 21. I'd won everything. And I remember being asked by several people, what have you won? Have you won the USA? Have you won the Nationals? Have you won the Junior USA? Have you won Junior Nationals? It's like, no. It's like, well, you were
like Quadzilla then, though. Like, your lower body was definitely more advanced than the upper body, correct?
Yeah, and that was my calling card. As a junior athlete, going through the junior ranks, 19, 20 years old, my leg development was that of a Mr. Open class athlete. I would even go as far as saying my legs were better back then than they are now, because I put so much emphasis into my leg training, and there was no injuries. I was just this young bull that was give it to me, you know, give it to me. It was a point to prove against all my older training partners. Yeah, but my leg development came very fast, and I think that I attest that really to my rugby days and my track and field days. That quick off the mark, explosive reaction, definitely, and obviously in rugby, picking athletes up, you know, rugby players up and driving them back. There's a lot of quad development, hamstring development that's come from there, calf development. So when I actually got into the gym and focused solely on leg day, hamstrings, calves, they blew up. My upper body was very slow in developing compared to my legs, of course. And that's one of the reasons why Neil, when I started working with Neil, along with Dorian, advised me to take a complete year off my legs, so for my upper body to catch up. And it was actually one of the best things I could have done. They literally banned me from the leg room at my gym. It was a horrible situation. That was my thing, you know.
Flex,
So,
how old were you when you came to California? Because I remember, what year was that? Because I remember meeting you at the Max Muscle store when I still owned it, and you were actually filming your very first video with some guy that I can't remember who that was, but I
Was
remember.
it 05? Was it 05 or you came to see me at the 05 Olympia. We flexed the calves in my garage. So you were out there around that time, and then you were there for 06 also when I won.
It seems earlier than 05 in my head.
I think it was either 03 or 2000.
I bought the store in 04, so it's got to be around 04. July 04 is when I got it. Yeah.
Right, so it would have been the earlier years then. If you got it then, it must have been around about that time, because I came out, I don't know if this was the same time. I came out, I was 20 years old. I done a photo shoot in Milos's gym in Coliseum, but we stayed at the Marina Pacific Hotel.
Yeah.
I just remember that's the first time I ever stayed in that hotel. And I would walk everywhere. Oh, first off, again, this is the concept. You ask anybody in the US, how far is Gold's Gym? 5 minutes. But I come from Wales, you know, that's walking. We walk, like, you know. So it's fucking 1 hour walk, you know, whatever it was. So I remember just walking everywhere. I must have lost about 15 pounds in that trip. But going to your store then, Dave, was an amazing eye-opener for me, because you just didn't know who was going to walk in at any point in time. And I always remember how great you were with me, you know. And again, now I'm in the situation I'm in myself, where I can pass back, and I love passing back. Jay loves passing back. You were so good to me when I came to that store for the first time. I remember you gave me some free clothing, and you didn't really know me from anybody, right? But you made sure that my first experience was one that I walk away. And I always tell that story. It was an amazing experience, because you made me, not only did you give me free clothes, but you made me play the Xbox. You said, everybody plays this. And I was like, I don't know how to play this Xbox. They were like, you learn, because Chris Cormier is coming in. You've got to beat him.
That's right.
Flex, I want to ask you though. So you went to the Mecca of bodybuilding, right? You did this shoot at Milos's gym with the famous Chris Lund, I think, right, was the first photo shoot. You know, obviously we knew Peter McGuff. He was, he was working for Flex. I'm sure he kind of linked that up. But when you walked in the Mecca of bodybuilding and you saw all those pictures, do you remember the first day you walked in, and what was that experience like when you had seen it in the books for so long and for the first time walking in? Because listen, I still remember the first time in '93 I walked in that bad boy. You know, Kerry was with me at the time. We were 19 years old. And I remember I talk about it in my videos, and it's like the air comes rushing through because the backside's open, right? And you look at the walls and you're like, oh my goodness, like this is so much history, right? So what was that feeling that when you walked through those doors, and who did you see? Like, do you recall any people that you saw for the first time, or anyone that wowed you, like training there?
So before I moved to LA and I would see more of you guys, I remember when I was coming back and forth originally, the first ever experience I had, I walked in the week of the Ironman. So there was Tom Prince, there was Hamid Haidar, there was I think
wow.
There was, so this was a who's who. And of course, I'm this massive fan of bodybuilding. I'm still a massive fan of bodybuilding, just to clarify that. I love bodybuilding. But walking in to Gold's Gym for the first time, let's be honest, your eyes are everywhere. And I'm looking at the walls and seeing all these pictures. And it's just an incredible thing for a young teenager who has been brought up in a small gym all his life to then walk in, and the foyer is bigger than the gym that used to train at. So we're not talking about the equipment right now, right? So I'm walking in and I'm looking around. I start spotting athletes, and I'm not obviously as confident as what I am right now. I'm sure you would say the same thing when you're 19. You're very nervous, and you see, oh my gosh, and you're trying to be cool, but there's no way about being cool, right? You're fanboying. So it's like, oh my gosh. You know, there's so-and-so over there, and oh my gosh, is that? So I seen everybody from the athletes that were competing at the Ironman to the regulars, Tito, Raymond, and, you know, the regular gym goers that are still there to this day. But also what blew my mind was all the chicks that are walking around in bikinis. It's like, what the hell is this? I'm fucking moving now.
Yeah.
I'm moving now. It's like, what the hell? It's like, you know, what I brought up on was definitely, you know, you would never see anything like that. You'd be lucky to see a power lifter. And that's not a pretty sight when I was growing up. But in Gold's Gym, it was just a mixture of memories, a flood back. And again, I think I took the first maybe week that I was there to just stare at the walls. And my workouts went to shit, you know, but I wasn't really there to show off. I wasn't there to impress anybody. I was getting so much motivation from just looking from the visual that it just, when I went back to Wales, I mean, I just turned into this machine. That first experience opened my eyes to everything. And that's one of the reasons why I committed myself to becoming a bodybuilder at 19 years old, because I wouldn't have never seen this lifestyle in Wales. I didn't know that you could have a career and make the money you can, or, you know, open the doors you can from bodybuilding. And at 19, you know, and being told many times that I was crazy leaving this rugby career that was put on a plateau for me to pursue this bodybuilding, I solidified it to them then when I went back, and I was like, listen, this is what can be seen, this is what we can done. And of course, I had all the VHS, DVD, videos, cassettes for all the kids watching this. There is such a thing as a VHS cassette that came out before DVDs. I had them all. Jay, I still got all your DVDs somewhere. They're all stacked up somewhere.
Lex, you mentioned, you know, all these actors and whatnot. I'm sure Arnold, but who kind of was, you think, your biggest inspiration that was inside bodybuilding? Like, who did you look at and I always wonder this, because like I looked at Dorian Yates because we were around the same height and he was a mass monster. Did you look at guys that were maybe a little shorter, that were like built up, or like, and then I know there's a lot of comparisons this day and age with eras of like Flex Lewis versus so-and-so. Yeah. And I don't want to get into that, but like, who did you look at and say, okay, this is my guy? If you could pick one, I know there's probably many, Flex, but like, who did you really look at physique wise that gave you that motivation?
Lee Priest. I looked at everything Lee Priest done, and he was, to me, just the ultimate athlete. I mean, I didn't, you know, again, it was, to me, I had every, what was it called, a Blonde Myth, another Blonde Myth, all the VHS, everything I could get my hands on being in Wales, I watched of Lee's. I didn't meet Lee till later on, in many years later, but to him, being a short bodybuilder and it's freaky, and the bar was so high, I looked at him and I was, you know, 18, 19, 20, and I'm seeing his videos when he was that age. I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh. But I put the bar up high, and I'm thinking like, okay, that's the standard, that's what you've got to chase, you know, and I don't know how the hell I'm going to do it, but that's the standard. And of course, as the years have gone on, you know, there's other athletes that I look at, and I've taken bits from everybody. And I've said this many times to you, Jay, business aspects of things, like there's nobody doing what you've done, the doors you've opened, and how you think about chess moves in business. Again, I put you as the top of the tree in that, because there's no Jay Cutler nobody's doing what Jay Cutler is doing. So, and business is you. And again, is an aspect.
Yeah, you've done a great job. I mean, as the ambassador, and, you know, you've definitely picked up a lot of traits of, you know, what the champions do, I think, to the most potential. But, you know, for me, I was one of these guys that I came from a super small town, 6,000 people in the town I grew up in. I never imagined that I would make it to the echelon of being like Mr. Olympia. I mean, we don't see that as we're going up, but was that something that you had in your, like, okay, this is obviously, it's a dream, right? But did you ever think that, you know, you would become Mr. Olympia you know, even though, you know, you hold the 202 or 212, whatever it is. Did you hold the 202 or just the 212?
Just the 212.
212, yeah. And, you know, obviously now gunning for the open class, you know, this looks pretty exciting to you right now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You see this, Flex?
I see it.
How would this look sitting with all your crystals? They're glasses you have, those big crystals, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I can't swing my computer around, but I'm a big mentalist. So I put a hole in my I created a trophy cabinet. Now I don't know if you can see this, but you have a look.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have space, Flex.
Well, there's it. That's it. So I come in my office every single day, and I sit here and I see a space. I do this to myself all the time. If I'm going for a goal, whether I'm going for a dream, you know, I look and listen to a lot of what Conor McGregor says. He speaks the words and it'll come true. As long as you're aiming and you put in every foot forward, you can achieve the goals. Like I tell people now that the goals, the dreams that I put forth many years ago, I'm living right now. But there was many different steps and many goals that I had to put in front of each other for me to reach that dream, right? Now, if I told myself at 19 I was going to be Mr. Olympia or 212 Mr. Olympia, I'd be crazy because there's so many steps that have to be done prior to that. So my goal was to win the junior Wales, win the junior Britain, win the junior Europe, go on and on and on and on. So I never really seen past anything. Now, if you speak to Neil's been my biggest, you know, cheerleader and visualist ever. The man has believed in me more than I believed in myself sometimes. So he's been telling me to do the open class for a long time, but we also had unfinished business in the 212. So now, you know, with what I was saying back now and saying about Conor McGregor, you know, he comes from a very, very similar upbringing to me. You know, very similar. Yes, he's in a different country, but you know, where I live is a very similar area to where he lives. You know, blue collar, nothing's been given to him. He's had to work for it, and of course, you can love Conor, you can hate Conor, but obviously there's a lot of underlying truths, and there's no way you can kick that guy's work ethic. He is a beast, and when he turns his brain on to things, he's relentless, and the talent he has is unbelievable. But he also has to sell fights, and he can talk his way into anything. I'm not that guy. That's the difference between me and Conor. I don't talk shit. That's not me. I never will be. Other athletes I've stood against, even when I did my last 212. I mean, they were talking with Conor McGregor, but when you're up on that stage, you got to deliver, right? But with him, he speaks about putting stuff out into the atmosphere, and I do that too. I just don't post it. I tell people close to me. So then we can look back and say, okay, you said it, you done it, let's move on. But, you know, there's definitely a few holes here. I know what them holes are for, but I've created this office and I purposely made holes here for me to look at every single day. And you know, I'm old and wise enough to know that I'm doing everything in my power to chase these goals and these dreams. You know, if it doesn't come to fruition, then I know that I've done everything, right? Just like when you were chasing Ronnie, every year I've seen so many interviews where you've said, there's no way Ronnie's going to beat me this year. You've done everything in your power. And then obviously the result didn't fall in your favor, but you know you've done everything. So that's where I am right now.
Mr. J, look who I've got here today. 7-time Mr. Olympia.
212 before somebody else knows about it, right?
Before we, yes. Before we ran into any lawsuits.
Hey, bro, is there any fucking space for me to have a photo, yeah? It's like, what's up with this place? It's like a Jay's King.
Because it's Jay Cutler Shrine.
It is, man. It is. No, honestly, it's great to see so much love from this guy for you. It's been a long time coming for me to come to this gym. So
yeah.
Finally, now I've got to find a photo, a space for a picture to put up of myself, right? Not something when I was a teenager.
We'll make room, don't worry.
Hey, bro, I get fucking huge in this stuff. Is this a secret?
Is this a secret?
That's the secret to get huge. 3 scoops before we train.
Jay, see you soon, bro.